So how will foreign policy change under President Trump, and how does the world see the outcome of this election? I'm joined now by Nina Japaridze. She is a North American vice president of Ipsos. That is a global market and opinion research and consulting firm. Why don't we start with China? We just saw Tong Bo's piece. He's unpredictable. Hillary Clinton was pretty predictable. She was the architect of the pivot to Asia. China really knew what they were getting with Hillary Clinton. They really don't know what they're getting with Donald Trump. Of course, he's talked about tariffs, but will he be as strong in terms of, the South China Sea issue, putting more ships in the area? What do we know about him? He seems like an isolationist. What are your thoughts?
I would say that the fact that Trump has not prioritized pivot to Asia as the cornerstone of his Asia policies is good news for China. At the same time, China must be concerned when reviewing his first plan that he put forward, 100 days in office, what he would do. He is revisiting the question of U.S. relations with Japan, South Korea, recommending that the best way to move forward would be to develop nuclear armaments to defend their territorial integrity and security, and putting on the table potential withdrawal and disengagement, renegotiation of existing relations with these key allies would be perhaps also a destabilizing factor if he were to deliver on what he promised during the elections.
You mentioned key allies. We've seen rather muted responses from U.S. allies. And of course, NATO concerned about some of the things he said during the campaign. And yet Russia's reaction, it seems as though Vladimir Putin very much handing out the olive branch, looking forward to kind of turning the page in terms of relations with the United States.
Yes, the news that Trump is going to be the elected 45th president of the United States was greeted with grand applause in the lower house of Russia's parliament. And President Putin gave his speech already, saying that he's ready to renew relations with the United States of America. They're right now at the very, very bottom, at the very low, degraded. We can't go any lower. And improvement in these ties requires cooperation, and Russia is ready to improve the ties. Where we are is not Russia's fault. And another thing that's really important to keep in mind is Russia says that this can only advance if the United States appreciates Russia's national security interests. And is there going to be a problem for President Trump? What if Russia's national security interests actually are not coinciding with the United States' national security interests in terms of how we view developments in Europe? Ukraine is a perfect example of it, right? Will we continue to do nothing about Russia's occupation of Crimea and eastern Ukraine? It really would depend on who he would bring as his advisors, key advisors, as far as how U.S. policies towards Russia would be shaped. Will it be Newt Gingrich, or would it be on record to say that U.S. should give lethal weapons? That's not at all the position of General Flynn, for example. So pro-Russian policy, is that what President Trump will have, or are we going to see more the continuation of really what U.S. policy has been towards Russia under Obama?
It's interesting, his speech very, very early this morning, which I watched, a lot of people asleep, but he talked about building infrastructure, getting people back to work. It seemed like a very domestic-centric agenda. You hail from Georgia. What about folks in Georgia, Ukraine? How are people viewing this if it's going to be more of an isolationist type of approach?
People in Georgia, people in Ukraine, as you mentioned, or anywhere really in what Russia loves to call its periphery. They forget that these countries have been independent for many, many years now and are sovereign. And these societies are concerned with preserving their freedoms, preserving their territorial integrity, and America that is inward-looking and not engaged with the rest of the world, of course, brings nothing but fear for populations in Georgia or Russia. Some groups in Russia too, because not everyone necessarily supports Putin. But in Ukraine, we can't forget that when President Poroshenko was visiting New York during September UNGA meetings, Trump did not meet with him. So relations with Ukraine are not necessarily in a good start.
Nina Japaridze, thanks so much for coming in, offering your observations. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.